When the Galactic Armada saw Earth send a single pilot to their war council, they laughed. 15 minutes later, nobody was laughing, because the pilot wasn't there to talk. He was there to erase fleets. The galaxy's most powerful commanders gathered in the high spire of Zithian Prime, a structure so tall its upper levels vanished into the clouds. Crystal walls refracted the twin suns into 1,000 glittering prisms. Delegates of 100 species filled the chamber, their voices echoing with derision. At the center, a massive holographic display rotated slowly. Earth. They've sent one pilot, sneered Admiral Varric of the Dract, a reptilian colossus whose scales shimmered like polished bronze. His jaw clacked in amusement. Is this a declaration or a joke? Laughter rippled through the room. The Sithari ambassador, a translucent jelly-like being suspended in nutrient gel, pulsed with amusement. Perhaps they misunderstand the invitation. A fleet demonstration requires fleets, not a human hobbyist in a cockpit. Humans have always been primitive, added Chancellor Zur of the Veyrac Consortium, his mandibles twitching with satisfaction. Too fragile for war. Too sentimental for strategy. Too small-minded to matter. The ridicule grew, echoing across the chamber until the words themselves seemed to bounce from wall to wall. Then the doors opened. He entered alone. Commander Elias Kale didn't stride in with swagger, nor shrink under the weight of alien gazes. He walked with calm precision, hands folded behind his back, posture straight as a blade. His black flight suit bore only a single insignia, a silver circle enclosing a stylized Earth. "Good morning," he said cheerfully, his voice carrying just enough volume to cut through the laughter. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Traffic on the way here was brutal. And by traffic, I mean the part where your security insisted I surrender my sidearm 3 separate times. Efficient system you've got. Slightly redundant." A few delegates shifted uneasily. Humor wasn't the expected response. Varric leaned forward, nostrils flaring. "One ship, human? Do you mock us?" Kale tilted his head, smiling politely. "Oh, not at all. I just don't like wasting fuel. Gas prices are murder these days." The chamber hushed. There it was, the human habit. Speaking in riddles, lacing trivial complaints with hints of something sharper. No one laughed this time. The presiding voice of the assembly, High Speaker Orvuk, raised his crystalline staff. "Commander Kale, Earth was summoned to display its martial capability. A singular vessel hardly qualifies." Kale's smile never faltered. "Respectfully, Speaker, I was told to bring what I thought sufficient. I did." Zur clicked his mandibles irritably. "Arrogance. This demonstration is a farce." Kale turned to him, expression calm. "If it helps, I'm equally nervous. After all, if I fail, Earth will look very small. And if I succeed," his gaze swept the room, "well, then the galaxy might look very small indeed." For the first time, silence clung to the hall. The delegation moved outside to the observation platform, suspended high above Zithian Prime's shimmering skyline. The sky opened to the void beyond, where fleets of every major power floated in ordered formation. Their hulls gleamed, weapon ports glowing like angry embers. The combined might of the galaxy waited, vast and terrible. And there, at the very edge of the staging field, sat one ship. Small, sleek, black as obsidian, its surface swallowed the light around it. No banners, no flourish, no visible weaponry. Just an angular craft, silent and still, as though carved from the darkness itself. The aliens erupted in laughter once again. "That," Varric thundered, "that is a courier at best, a shuttle at worst." Kale regarded his vessel with a faint smile. "Looks can be deceiving. I hear the same thing about me." High Speaker Orvuk gestured impatiently. "Proceed. Show us this sufficiency you claim." Kale inclined his head, as if thanking a gracious host. "With pleasure." Inside the human craft, the command chamber came alive at his touch. Panels unfolded silently, interfaces glowing with pale blue light. He sank into the pilot's chair, hands brushing across the controls as though reacquainting himself with an old friend. "All right, girl," he murmured to the ship. "They're laughing now. Let's fix that." The vessel hummed, energy building like a storm held in a bottle. Kale opened the comms to the galactic fleet. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the void. This is Commander Elias Kale of Earth. Callsign Whisper. Demonstration commencing. I promise to keep it short, attention spans vary, and some of you look like you'd rather be at brunch." No response. Only static and suppressed irritation. He flicked a switch. The void rippled. The whisper vanished. Gasps echoed across the observation platform. "Cloaking." Zer hissed. "Impossible. Our sensors track on every spectrum." Before he finished, one of the Veyrak destroyers erupted in a controlled explosion. Not catastrophic, just enough to sever its primary engines. It drifted helplessly, lights flickering. Kale's voice cut across the comms again, casual, almost apologetic. "Sorry about that. You parked a little close to the fire exit." A second warship blinked on the displays, its weapon systems locked, targeting scrambled beyond recovery. The crowd leaned forward, stunned. The whisper reappeared briefly, hovering nose to nose with a Dract battleship 10 times its size. The battleship opened fire, beams of white plasma roaring forth. But the human ship wasn't there. It was already gone, sliding through folds of space like a shadow moving between lamps. Within seconds, the Dract vessel's entire arsenal went offline, disabled with surgical precision. Its crew flailed at controls, powerless. Verek's scales flushed dark, his bellows shaking the platform. "This is trickery." Kale's voice returned, calm as ever. "No tricks. Just practice." The demonstration escalated. Ship after ship found themselves outmaneuvered, their weapons turned against them or rendered inert. Kale never destroyed, he humiliated. Engines froze, shields inverted, entire fleets tangled in their own targeting systems. Each strike was exact, each insult to alien pride sharpened like a blade. And all the while, his commentary was maddeningly polite. "Apologies for nudging your cruiser into that asteroid field. My depth perception's terrible. Please do check your life support systems. I only borrowed them for a moment. Friendly advice: next time, don't put all your command ships in one neat little row. It makes things too easy." By the 10th disablement, the chamber on Zithian Prime had gone deathly still. The laughter was gone. In its place lingered the cold, creeping realization that one man, one ship, had just embarrassed the galaxy's strongest fleets. Kale's ship drifted back into visibility, unscathed, hovering before the observation platform like a predator studying prey. The comms opened one final time. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "Well," he said, "that was fun. But this was only the warm-up." The feed cut. Silence. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's powers had no words. Only questions. Only fear. And Commander Elias Kale stepped calmly from his vessel, smiling as though he'd merely returned from a stroll. "Now," he said politely, "shall we discuss terms?" The galactic capital's War Council chamber was less a hall of governance and more a monument to arrogance. Gold leaf panels reflected the glow of holographic stars, while dozens of species filled tiered seats in a display of wealth and hierarchy. They weren't gathered out of necessity, they were gathered to mock. At the center of the floor hovered the projection of Earth's so-called fleet. One dot. A lone human vessel, outlined in cold blue light, drifting toward the combined armada of 47 alien nations. The laughter was immediate. "Tell me I'm not seeing this," scoffed Admiral Caxer of the Vedril. His chitinous mandibles clicked together in amusement. "One ship, one pilot. The humans send us a child's toy to fight lions." Another admiral, scales gleaming green under the chamber's light, added with a hiss, "Perhaps Earth has run out of warriors. Perhaps they send us their farmer's boat." Polite chuckles echoed from every tier. Then the doors at the back hissed open, and silence rippled across the chamber. A human entered. He wasn't armored, wasn't flanked by soldiers, wasn't even dressed in the sharp steel-gray uniforms expected of Earth's representatives. Instead, he wore something startlingly plain: black slacks, a white shirt rolled at the sleeves, and a tie he'd knotted loosely as if mocking the occasion. His walk wasn't slow or hurried. It was deliberate. He moved with the steady calm of someone who already knew how the night would end. Pilot designation: Commander Elias Wren, the Chamber's AI announced, its tone neutral. Representative of Earth's strike response. Representative. A laugh cracked from the insectoid ranks. You mean their only survivor? Wren stopped at the center, beneath the holographic map of the galaxy. He glanced around as if he'd just walked into a cocktail party and found everyone overdressed. Gentlemen, he said with a smile. And ladies. And, whatever it is the Gorthay KS identify as these days. A chorus of hisses and growls rose, but Wren only tucked his hands casually behind his back. You've been laughing, he said smoothly. That's good. Laughter keeps the heart healthy. But allow me to offer a clarification. Earth didn't send one ship because we lack more. Earth sent one ship because one is enough. The chamber erupted again, roars of amusement, disdain, and disbelief. Arrogant primate, spat a Krith general. Your planet's history is one of failure. You've been conquered, enslaved, uplifted, and mocked across ages. You are latecomers playing war. Wren's smile widened, but his eyes hardened, steel hidden behind glass. Yes, he agreed. We are latecomers. Which means we studied every mistake the rest of you kindly demonstrated. Think of us as the student who watched the class fail the exam before writing his own answers. That silenced them briefly. From the upper tiers, an elder species, the Solari, spoke with gravitas. Commander Wren, do you truly believe your single craft could oppose the united fleets of this galaxy? Wren's reply was casual, as if he were discussing the weather. Believe? No. I calculate it. The silence grew heavier. Calculation implied planning. Planning implied capability. He tapped his wrist console. The holographic display above shifted, alien fleets shown in formation, numbers glowing beside them. Then, with each tap of his finger, entire flotillas blinked red. You've positioned your battleships here. Good, textbook defense, except you left a corridor for counterflanking maneuvers. Your supply lines. He highlighted thin glowing strands. Fragile. 3 nodes. Cut those, and your fleet collapses in 12 hours. He leaned casually against the projection platform, as though critiquing a chessboard. As for your carriers, well, they're too clustered. One well-timed strike, and half your fighters won't launch. It's almost unfair. The room was no longer laughing. The alien admirals shifted uncomfortably. Some muttered, some glared. And some, the wiser ones, kept utterly still, as though watching a predator stretch its claws. Finally, Admiral Caxa snarled, You speak theory. Words. Do you expect us to fear a human tongue? No, Wren said, straightening. His tone was polite, almost kind. I expect you to fear what comes after the words. He gave a small nod to the hologram. The blue dot, the single human vessel, expanded. Its shape unfolded, revealing strange contours alien sensors hadn't catalogued. Spines bristled, heat signatures bloomed, and a ripple of distortion shivered outward. This, Wren said softly, is the Erebus. Prototype strike craft. Crew 1. Weapons. Classified. Performance. Untested, on your fleets, at least. The chamber darkened as the projection simulated movement. The Erebus darted like a shark through swarms of cruisers, its weapons lighting in short, surgical bursts. Alien battleships winked out of the map one by one, dissolving into red. In less than 2 minutes, the holographic fleet was gone. A deathly quiet hung over the council. That, Wren said, was a conservative estimate. Someone in the rear whispered, Impossible. Another muttered, Illusion. Trickery. But the oldest of the Solari leaned forward, voice like stone cracking. No. It is a warning. Ren turned toward him with that same polite smile. Exactly. Earth is very polite, you see. We like to send warnings before we act. It's our way of saying, don't make us prove the point. The chamber rippled with unease. 1,000 years of alien wars, empires rising and falling, and yet none of them had seen a human stand so calmly before the jaws of annihilation. One of the younger alien officers, scales quivering, finally snapped. Why risk your life then? Why walk alone into this hall if you're bluffing? Ren's smile vanished. For the first time, his voice carried no humor. Because, he said softly, if I don't return, my ship launches automatically. And when it does, your fleets won't be laughing, they'll be history. Gasps broke out. Even the most arrogant shifted back in their seats. Ren tugged at his tie, loosening it further, and exhaled as though settling into a chair at home. Now then, shall we proceed with diplomacy, or do you insist on a live demonstration? The silence was his answer. Not a soul dared move. And in that silence, humanity stopped being the galaxy's punchline. The moment Commander Valen barked for fire, the void lit with streaks of searing plasma. Alien destroyers surged forward like wolves chasing a wounded deer. Their confidence was absolute. Against a single Terran vessel, the odds seemed laughably skewed. The Dauntless remained still. Not defensive. Not evasive. Simply waiting. Yarrick leaned back in his chair, tapping his console as though scrolling through weekend emails. They always come in hot, he muttered. No foreplay. Ensign Kira chuckled despite herself. Sir, 36 cruisers closing to weapons range. Shields up. Not yet. Let them feel bold, Yarrick said, sipping cold coffee from a dented steel mug. His tone was maddeningly casual, as though commenting on traffic instead of imminent annihilation. On the enemy bridge, Admiral Korath of the Drakari Collective squinted at his tactical display. The human ship does not move. Does not raise shields. It insults us by refusing to fight. It may be damaged, suggested his second officer. Korath's mandibles clicked with amusement. Then let us finish the cripple. Fire all batteries. The first volley struck. Brilliant white impacts slammed into the dauntless hull. The ship rocked, barely. No shield shimmered, no retaliation followed. To the aliens, it was proof of human weakness. To Yarrick, it was bait. He set his mug down with deliberate care. Kira. Record their firing pattern. They'll think they're scoring hits. Let's not ruin their fun yet. Another officer frowned. Sir, their entire fleet is unloading on us. Yarrick smiled politely. Yes, and they're learning absolutely nothing. We've already mapped 90% of their targeting algorithms. It's like watching a kid copy answers from the wrong test. Minutes passed. Alien plasma fire grew frantic, but the Dauntless floated through it like a rock in a storm. Scars blackened the hull, but nothing vital was touched. Inside, the crew felt the tension coil tighter, like a spring waiting to snap. Finally, Kira whispered, Captain, if we wait any longer, they'll think we're helpless. Exactly, Yarrick replied. He stood, stretching his arms as though just waking up. Time to return their hospitality. The Dauntless came alive. Panels slid open along its flanks, revealing rows of weapons unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Not glowing plasma cannons, but sleek rail batteries humming with kinetic energy. Invisible to scanners until they fired. The first shot screamed across space, a solid tungsten slug moving at 12 kilometers per second. It punctured a Drakari cruiser amidships, exiting the far side before the crew inside knew they were dead. The ship folded in half, blossoming into molten wreckage. Before the debris even cooled, 5 more slugs ripped through the formation. Alien vessels burst apart like overripe fruit. Jarrick's voice was calm over calms. Target their rear guard. Leave the command ship for dessert. Panic rippled through the enemy fleet. Ships scattered, trying to break formation, but the Dauntless tracked them with surgical precision. Every rail slug was calculated, anticipated, merciless. Inside the Drakari flagship, Admiral Korath slammed his clawed hand against the console. Impossible! Their weapons, primitive metals, cannot. He choked off as another cruiser vanished from his tactical screen. His second officer trembled. Admiral, they knew our shield's blind frequencies. They are aiming where we are weakest. Korath snarled. No. They planned this. On the Dauntless, Kira stared in awe. Sir, how did you know their shield harmonics before they fired a single shot? Yarok didn't look up from his console. They've been using the same flawed design for 70 years. Earth engineers spotted it in archive transmissions during the first treaty conference. We filed it under comedy. The crew laughed nervously, then fell silent as the realization sank in. Yarok had walked them knowingly into the middle of a fleet just to prove a point. Alien chatter clogged the galactic comms. Other species watching the battle began transmitting warnings. Withdraw. That human ship is a trap. They baited you, fools. Pull back before it's too late. What are they? That's not a warship. It's a scalpel. But retreat was already impossible. Yarok had maneuvered them into a perfect kill zone. He tapped a final command. Now we heard them. The Dauntless unleashed a spread of microdrones, tiny, nearly invisible swarms that broadcast false sensor echoes. To the aliens, it looked like more Terran ships dropping out of stealth. Panic multiplied. Command structures fractured. Entire wings broke off, colliding with each other in desperate flight. Korath's eyes burned with disbelief. One human. One ship. And they play us like children. His officers begged for retreat, but Yarok had already boxed them in with carefully seeded mines. Mines disguised as drifting debris from earlier salvos. Every escape vector lit up with explosions. Korath slumped into his command chair, realization heavy in his bones. This was never a battle. Yarok finally opened a direct channel, his tone polite, almost cordial. Admiral Korath. Yarok Holt. Terran Fleet. Lovely weather we're having in this sector, isn't it? Korath bared his fangs. You lured us. Lured. Yarok tilted his head. No, Admiral. You chased us. I merely offered a convenient carrot. You supplied the stick. And now... His smile thinned, voice sharpening like a blade hidden in silk. Now I correct your mistake. With a flick of his hand, the dauntless broadside guns fired in unison. Half the Drakari fleet ceased to exist in that instant. For a long moment, silence dominated the void. Smoke and wreckage drifted like confetti across the stars. Then Yarok spoke again, calm as ever. You had numbers. We had preparation. You had arrogance. We had patience. In the end, Admiral, one is more than enough. His words carried across open comms, echoing into every listening station across the galaxy. Civilizations far beyond the battlefield heard them, and shivered. Inside the bridge of the Dauntless, no one moved. The crew stared at their captain as though seeing him for the first time. Not as a quirky, sarcastic officer with a chipped mug, but as something far colder. A predator with infinite patience. Kira finally whispered, Sir, was this the mission all along? Jarek's smile returned, warm but unreadable. Mission? Oh no. This was just the demonstration. The silence after the battle was almost worse than the screaming comms. 1,000 alien vessels had once filled the star map. Now, scattered wreckage glowed like dying coals in orbit. Some ships spun without power, their crews drifting in terror. Others limped away, broadcasting distress calls that went unanswered. At the center of the void, a single human fighter sat motionless, hull scarred but very much alive. Inside, Captain Mason reclined casually, helmet off, sipping from a dented thermos. He wasn't gloating. He didn't need to. The debris spoke for him. Across the galaxy, live feeds transmitted every second of the spectacle. Billions watched, governments panicked, militaries scrambled. Humanity had gone from dismissed novelty to existential threat in the span of one afternoon. The council chamber of the HFY Dominion was deathly quiet. Alien ambassadors with glistening scales, chittering mandibles, and transparent flesh all stared at the display, unable to reconcile the facts. A single pilot. One ship. Annihilation. Ambassador Kor, the reptilian envoy who'd once called humans soft mammals barely fit for trade, broke first. His tail lashed against the floor. This is impossible. He cheats physics itself. One vessel cannot erase a fleet. Mason's voice, polite and maddeningly calm, came over the open channel. Oh, I wouldn't say erased. More like gently rearranged into modern art. Impressive symmetry out there, don't you think? Gasps and hisses rippled across the chamber. He sounded amused, not strained. As if a galactic war was just Tuesday with extra paperwork. The veiled delegate, a gelatinous being known for its cold logic, pulsed a darker hue. You tampered with our sensors. No ship could. Tampered. Mason interrupted, tone playful. Friend, if I wanted to tamper, you wouldn't even know you had sensors. He leaned forward in the cockpit, letting the camera catch his eyes, steady, unblinking, with just enough of a smile to be unnerving. You see, humans don't like wars of attrition. We like conclusions. Quick ones. Neat ones. In the chamber, whispers turned to panic. The implication hung heavy. This wasn't an anomaly. It was a demonstration. Ambassador Kor slammed a clawed hand on the table. This cannot stand. One pilot does not represent an entire species' capability. Mason chuckled softly, sipping again before answering. Of course not. I'm just... The polite knock at the door. He paused, letting tension climb. You should see what's standing behind it. The chamber froze. Every envoy realized simultaneously, this wasn't humanity's best. It wasn't even close. The recording feeds zoomed on Mason's fighter. Behind him, space shimmered faintly, as though reality itself was reconsidering its shape. Then, one by one, colossal silhouettes began to decloak. Not frigates. Not cruisers. Behemoths. Ancient Earth warships, silent and waiting, engines pulsing like dormant beasts stirred awake. Each bore the insignia of Earth, not gleaming, but scorched and scarred, as if they'd already survived hell and come back to tell the tale. The council chamber erupted in chaos. The insectoid envoy shrieked in panic. The Veil's liquid body quivered violently. Even Kor's voice broke into a hiss. You had an armada hidden? How long? Where? Mason tilted his head innocently. Oh, about as long as you've been laughing at us. He set down the thermos with a deliberate clink. You thought humanity was fragile, scattered, desperate. But while you were mocking, we were patient. While you were underestimating, we were preparing. He let silence hang, the kind that felt like a blade hovering over every neck. You see, history taught us a trick or two. Never let your enemy know when you've already built the trap. The camera widened, showing dozens, no, hundreds, of Earth vessels phasing into visibility. Their formation was flawless, predatory. Not a random defense fleet. A hunting pack. The ambassador of the crystalline Sarai finally whispered what the rest feared to admit. This was never a defense. Mason smiled with quiet satisfaction. Correct. This was an invitation. The words dropped like gravestones. Every alien in the chamber realized too late, they hadn't cornered humanity. Humanity had lured them into the open, under the galaxy's watchful eye, to prove a point no fleet could erase. The feeds captured alien admirals shouting orders, retreating ships warping away in blind panic. But there was no hiding now. Billions across the stars had witnessed it, the predator behind the polite smile. Mason's voice, softer now, carried finality. You thought Earth was weak because we joked, because we smiled, because we pretended to be harmless. That's the thing about humans. We don't mind being underestimated. It makes the reveal so much more entertaining. He reached forward, hand hovering over the control panel. His eyes never left the camera. Now run. Run fast. And remember, next time you scoff at Earth, ask yourself if you really want the punchline. The feed cut to black. Back in his cockpit, Mason finally leaned back, the mask of menace slipping for a moment. He muttered to himself, voice low, almost weary. God, I hope Command appreciated the theatrics. Because if not, I just wasted a perfectly good thermos of coffee. But even as he joked, his gaze flicked once more to the fleet decloaking behind him. Humanity's shadow had stepped into the light. And the galaxy would never laugh again.